You're thinking small. We need to be thinking big. You need to be thinking big. You need to be thinking big. Think big.
This is 22-year-old Deandria Ford, a young mother whose disappearance would expose one of the most disturbing intersections between work and violence. She was a $1,500 capital murder witness, and just days before she was set to testify, she accepted a one-night pleasure business deal with a man she believed was a customer. That decision would lead to her being found dead months later, in circumstances far more chilling than anyone first realized. On the early morning of September 22, 2023, Deandria walked out of Diva's Bikini Sports Bar after her shift, where surveillance cameras captured her getting into a white van with a quiet, seemingly ordinary man. But what happened next immediately raised suspicion. The van didn't drive off. Instead, it sat in the parking lot for more than an hour with its headlights off, an eerie pause that would later become a critical piece of evidence. And once the van finally pulled away, Deandria vanished. Within hours, her family knew something was wrong. She never made it home, never answered her phone, and never returned to her 4-year-old son. As detectives dug deeper, they found the terrifying reason behind her disappearance. But to understand what had really happened to her that night, let me take you back to where and how this all began. This is the tragic life and death of Deandria Ford.
Why have one when you can have five? Why have five? You can have nine. I give away a you can have mine. I need a break from a like it's halftime. Blah, 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 blah. Get out my ear. Always talking about I ain't trying to hear. I had to tell.
Deandria Ford was born on October 24, 2001. While many details about her parents weren't widely known, two family members stood at the center of her life: her uncle Kevin Carrier and her grandmother Bridget Carrier. Her grandmother, a familiar face on social media, was known for her vibrant, eventful life. But the turning point for the family came when, at just 16 years old, Deandria discovered she was pregnant. It was a life-changing moment for a teenager with dreams bigger than her circumstances, but what she did next would define who she was becoming. She moved in with her grandmother and embraced motherhood with a determination that surprised no one who knew her. And from the moment he was born, everything changed. Her child became her reason, her anchor, her fuel. But supporting a baby takes money she didn't have. So she worked hard, at multiple jobs, day shifts, night shifts, whatever it took. However, there was another side to her life, one that many people judged without understanding. Deandria earned most of her income from meeting men privately and providing pleasure for money. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't safe, but it paid the bills. And for her, being able to take care of her son mattered more than anyone's opinions. And survival meant everything. Yet, despite this, she wasn't reckless and she wasn't unkind. She was loved at home, loved by her friends, and soon she would be loved at her new job too. Now, here's where things began to shift. When her son was born, responsibility hit hard. She needed more income, more stability. So she made a decision that would change everything. She applied for a job at Diva's Bikini Sports Bar, a place where dancers could earn legally and consistently. And with her experience dealing with clients, it wasn't surprising that she got hired almost immediately. So she widened her search for work and soon landed a position at Diva's Bikini Sports Bar, a place where her experience made her a perfect fit. From the outside, the job might have seemed risky, but to the people inside that bar, she was known for something entirely different. She wasn't reckless or careless. She was punctual, respectful, hardworking, and always trying to stay on the right side of people. Those who worked with her said she was helpful, dependable, someone they grew fond of quickly. But as much as people loved her, not everyone who walked through those doors had good intentions. And one of those people with ill intentions walked in on the early morning of September 22, 2023. Deandria was just nearing the end of her shift that night at the bar. She was almost ready to call it a night. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and it was just her usual routine. But everything changed when a man walked in. This man was someone she's never seen before. But thinking that he was just another customer walking into the bar, Deandria did not pay much attention to him at first. This guy was just like any other Joe in that place that night. Nothing flashy about him, nothing special. But there was something eerily off about him, something that would make sense in a very near future. Deandria's step to danger began when the man initiated a conversation with her. The man seemed confident, which suggested that he knew exactly how to act in situations like this. She seemed hesitant to continue the interaction in the beginning, but for some weird reason, Deandria's gestures softened and her gleam returned. From that moment on, it is pretty clear that the man had offered her something and she agreed to it. Witnesses later described it as a private negotiation, ending with him motioning toward the exit. And just like that, she stepped outside with him. Now here's when it started to get weirder. You see, Deandria never leaves that bar alone, especially in late hours like that. But that night, lured by the pretense of receiving a big amount of money, she texted her friend and told her she had found another way home. That is one of the biggest red flags that happened that night. Cameras outside Divas captured what happened next. Deandria walked to a white GMC Savannah van and climbed into the passenger seat. New Jersey plates. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. But here's what's insane about this. That small detail would later become a critical piece of the investigation. But wait, it gets weirder. The van didn't drive off immediately. It sat parked outside the bar, engine off, lights dark, for nearly an hour. No one knows exactly what happened inside during that time. Was she reconsidering, or was something else unfolding? Investigators later marked this pause as the first major red flag. Eventually, the headlights flicked on, and the van drove away. Unbeknownst to anyone, that will be the last time that Deandria would be seen alive. By the next morning, her family started to get worried. She was supposed to go home to her grandmother's house that night, but she never did. And to make matters worse, her phone remains unanswered. Her family and friends tried contacting her, but they received no response. And right at that moment, her loved ones knew something very terrible had happened. Within days, local media in Houston, Texas began covering the case. Reporters shared still images from the surveillance footage showing Deandria getting into the van with an unidentified customer. Her uncle told one outlet that before she left with the man, the same customer had been seen talking with another female staff member inside the bar for about 20 minutes, and the two had seemed familiar with each other. That detail suggested this was not necessarily a random stranger walking in for the first time. Even with that information, police had not yet identified a suspect. By Monday, September 25, 3 days after Deandria was last seen, her family decided they could not wait any longer. They reported her missing to the Houston Police Department. Investigators launched an inquiry aware that the first days in a missing person case are critical. They collected video from Divas and nearby businesses and began trying to track down the white van glimpsed on camera. Now the case was no longer just a frightening family mystery. It was an official investigation. As word spread, the East Houston community stepped up. Search parties formed, volunteers and relatives walked through local neighborhoods, parks, and abandoned spaces looking for any sign of her. People who had never met her joined the effort after seeing coverage on television or social media. Back at Divas, staff were shaken. They had watched her leave with the man, assuming she was either getting a ride or taking on a private job, something not unusual in that environment. Realizing she had not been heard from since raised heavy questions they could not answer. But even as searches continued and news reports circulated, one major fact about Deandria's life had still not been widely reported. And once it emerged, it would dramatically change how people understood what might have happened to her.
A 21-year-old Houston woman has now been missing for a week, and her family is asking for your help to hopefully find her. She was last seen getting into a van in front of a bar where she worked with an unidentified customer. Fox 26's Sherman DeSell is joining us live here from East Houston. And Sherman, you spoke to her family. What did they have to say?
Yeah, good evening, Anthony. Deandria Ford, she was working at the Divas Sports Bar and Grill, Bikini Sports Bar and Grill, as a dancer for only a few weeks. The family says that the last time they heard from her was right before this happened, this September 21st, around 1 a.m. And she was seen on a video camera outside of the business getting into a van with someone who was in there just a few minutes before. So here's what we know so far. Around 1 a.m. that night, the surveillance video shows what the family members saw. They said that around 1 a.m. the girl got in the passenger seat of a white van outside the bar with the customer. They sit there for a little over an hour. The van then drives off, and her uncle says before she got in the van with the customer, that same customer was seen talking to another female staff member inside the bar for a little while, about 20 minutes. They seem to be familiar with each other. No suspects have been identified by police. Deandria is also the mother of a 4-year-old boy, making this even more difficult for the family.
He don't know. I haven't said anything to him. But eventually, if it keeps on and we don't get no word, I'm gonna have to end up telling him.
It was pretty difficult to hear. So Deandria also called a friend around 2 a.m. that night. That friend missed that call because they were asleep. That friend, as well as family members, have been calling and texting her phone nonstop, hoping that one day she'll answer or that they find out where she is. So if you have any information on where Deandria Ford could be, contact Houston PD. Reporting from East Houston, Sherman DeSell, Fox 26 News.
2 weeks into the search, a development emerged that shifted the entire investigation. Until that point, the public believed Deandria had simply vanished after leaving work with a customer. But now another layer of her life came to light, one that added urgency, danger, and complexity. Local news confirmed that Deandria Ford was a witness in an upcoming capital murder trial. She had been scheduled to testify just 2 days after she disappeared. But the most startling revelation was that even her family did not know she was tied to such a serious case until reporters uncovered it. And what they learned next would change everything. However, the most shocking part wasn't just that she was a witness, but what she had witnessed. On May 18, 2023, 4 months before she vanished, Houston police responded to a shooting at an apartment complex on Solinsky Road in southeast Houston. When officers arrived, they found 35-year-old Otis Parker Jr. unresponsive in the driver's seat of a crashed vehicle. He had suffered at least one gunshot wound and was pronounced dead at the scene. Inside the same car was a passenger who survived unharmed. That passenger was Deandria Ford. But the full meaning of her presence there would not be understood until later. Now, it's at this point I want to introduce another layer of context because it shaped almost every danger she faced afterwards. Parker was reportedly a manager to several women, including Deandria, who earned money by meeting men for paid sexual services. According to what investigators pieced together, Parker arranged clients and handled high-paying deals. On the night he was killed, police concluded that Parker had just completed a business transaction involving at least $1,500. Not long after that exchange, officers say Parker and Deandria were intercepted by a group attempting to rob him of the money. In the chaos that followed, Parker was fatally shot. And that is how Deandria became the last living witness inside his car. But just when it seemed like investigators were catching up to what happened, the story grew even more complicated. Over the next month, police identified 4 suspects: 21-year-old Jarrell Tavon Wheeler, Jamal Ray Brown, Kuwana Renee Taylor, and the 23-year-old Mariah Corinthian Green. All 4 were charged with capital murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Because Deandria survived the attack, her testimony was expected to play a significant role in the upcoming trial. Prosecutors considered her presence in the car and the details she witnessed crucial. But now, with her disappearance happening just 2 days before she was supposed to appear in court, the connection seemed too obvious to ignore. Investigators knew the timing was suspicious, but then another discovery pushed the case even deeper into uncertainty. As local news outlets began reporting on her being a witness, Deandria's family pushed back. Her uncle urged the public to be cautious about linking her disappearance to the murder case. He worried that focusing on her involvement in the trial overshadowed the urgent need to find her. He emphasized to the reporters that Deandria being a witness to a capital murder case does not have anything to do with the fact that she is missing. More to that, he said that other details were being ignored, especially the discovery of the van. That detail shifted everything. It was only after examining out-of-state leads that investigators uncovered a breakthrough.
Now, all too often, we hear from families whose loved ones are missing, and we spend a part of our mornings talking about what's being done to find that person and the latest in the search and recovery efforts. In the past few weeks, the case of Deandria Ford has been discussed a lot right here in our newsroom. KPRC2 reporter Rochelle Turner has been following that story. Rochelle, so this is something that we discuss in our editorial meetings. We discuss how we're going to report on these things, but you're here to give more details on maybe why this case isn't getting all of the attention that you think it should.
Yes, and I'm so happy to be here on The Plus with you, Haley.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yeah.
So yes, Deandria Ford has been missing since September 21st, and her family is very upset and aggravated and angry about how her story is being told in the media. There are reports of Deandria talking about her past, about something that happened, and her family believes that doesn't have anything to do with her disappearance. So I spoke with her uncle, and he was very upfront. He wants to be transparent about her disappearance, and he said her being a witness in a capital murder case does not have anything to do with the fact that she is missing. And he believes that tidbit of information is what's stopping Houston police and other agencies from really just trying to figure out exactly where she is. He's revealed that detectives found the van that she supposedly got into the car, or she got into the van with a man. They found that in another state. They found cell phones, and they asked her family for DNA evidence. So her family is asking Houston police, why are you not reporting any of that information out there? But we spoke to her uncle, and I want to show you what he had to say.
At the end of the day, we want Deandria back. We want answers. We want any of the two.
Kevin Carrier says it's his mission to keep telling the world about his niece, Deandria Ford.
The local mother has been missing for nearly a week. Tonight, police and family members continue the search for Deandria Ford.
Today marks 3 weeks since 21-year-old Deandria Ford was last seen.
September 21st is the last time anyone saw Deandria. There is surveillance video of her leaving the Divas Bikini Bar and Grill, where she had worked for 2 weeks, and getting into a white van with a man.
At the end of the day, the one thing that I know to be the truth is that when my little niece is ready to leave from anywhere, if someone's not there to pick her up or get her, sometimes for a lack of better judgment, she'll accept a ride from people. I mean, she's never had a problem with that in the past, and I've spoken with her about that in the past, but I just don't want people to get it construed or twist anything. You know, that all spiraled from text messages from that she sent out saying that she was ready to be picked up to go home, you know, and for whatever reason she elected to find another way home.
Carrier says police in another state detained the suspect and he was released. He also shared that police found the van and 2 phones inside. And now detectives want DNA from Ford's 4-year-old son.
Put yourself in my shoes. I mean, what would you want me to do if I had that information?
A quick Google search of Deandria Ford shows headlines highlighting a different crime. Have you heard of Deandria Ford?
I have. I've been following it through the media reports, and of course, there were several things that stood out in my mind. First, you've got a witness in a capital murder case that's gone missing, and that always, to me, sends red flags up. The way she did go up missing, again, red flags go up. So it's kind of disturbing to me that nothing has been either reported on her whereabouts or what happened. So right now, just from looking at it objectively and just looking at it from just looking at the reports that I've seen, I would probably easily make the speculation that she went missing as a result of criminal conduct.
On November 1, roughly 6 weeks after Deandria vanished, police in another state contacted Houston detectives with shocking news. A van matching the one seen outside Divas had been located. Detectives immediately traveled to inspect the vehicle. When they opened it, they found shocking discoveries. Inside the vehicle were DNA evidence, multiple cell phones, and more items that belonged to both the driver and Deandria. But there was no sign of her or the mysterious man who last saw her. However, what officers found next raised the stakes even higher. Inside the vehicle, investigators recovered fingerprints. When those prints were entered into the national database, they matched a known offender, 51-year-old lled Washington. And this was not just a casual match. Washington had a violent criminal history, including repeated incidents of aggression toward women. His background painted a dangerous picture, and he was the last person seen with Deandria alive. But despite the mounting evidence, what investigators did next stunned everyone watching the case. After locating Washington in another state, police detained him and questioned him for hours. They asked where Deandria was, what happened in the van, and why her belongings were found inside. Washington had a calm, well-rehearsed story. He claimed innocence, insisted he had done nothing wrong, and provided answers that seemed to dodge direct implication. But then, unexpectedly, investigators released him.
Myself, family members, friends, volunteers, people who've been helping us with this since it initially broke, we all feel like law enforcement has either gotten complacent with this situation, with her recovery and return, or she's not a priority to them. And my reason for stating that is that, you know, after all of the information that was turned over by myself from the initial point of making, you know, the report of her missing, all of the groundwork that I did, everything that they received, I turned all that over in an orderly fashion. I withheld nothing. As I got new information, I fed that information to them. Now, believe it or not, it seems that I cannot get that same respect. I understand that they have to actually look into leads first, and they have to cancel out leads, but it's just communicating that, hey, such and such is going on. Okay, well, this didn't pan out, but we're looking into this now. It's what I was doing. It's the way I was communicating with them. There's no reason why you shouldn't have that same direct line of contact and communication or vocabulary with me. There's no reason why we should be at almost 3 weeks now without an update from HPD. Just to be clear about a couple of things, the Houston Police Department, they are fumbling the ball on this, and it needs to be known. So we were asked to keep vital information in, some information that they felt was threatening to the investigation. But at this point, the actions of the law enforcement agencies, because it's multiple agencies, it's crazy to me, and it's thrown me and my family for a loop. And now we're asking any agencies, organizations who have professionals who know how to operate, how to search and look for someone, how to make someone a priority, how to become engaged, how to not let go of that. We're asking them to step in right now. So just at full disclosure, we were told by HPD that the person of interest, suspect, was detained out of town. We were not given the information of which state he was detained in, but we were told that he was released we were told that his van and 2 cell phones that were found on his person were seized and turned over as evidence. We were told that warrants were being issued for the information on the cell phones that he had, that they recovered off of him. More importantly, we were called to bring her son to McCowell Road to give a DNA sample due to evidence or whatever they found was recovered in his van. They didn't say, it's not specified whether it belongs to her, someone else, him. I mean, but they asked for DNA just to have on file and to cross-reference against whatever they recovered. At this point, there's no reason why, after sharing that type of information, asking that of our family, you know what headspace you put someone in when you ask them to bring someone in to submit that type of information. So it is critical that the Houston Police Department find a better way to communicate with us.
The truth, however, was even more unsettling than anyone imagined. Washington walked free, despite the surveillance video, the fingerprints, the DNA evidence, and the phones found in his vehicle. For a community searching for a missing mother, the decision felt unthinkable. It drew outrage and confusion. Her family questioned whether being a black woman meant fewer resources and less urgency. In interviews, her uncle said plainly that cases involving black and brown victims often do not receive the same attention or pressure as those involving white victims. But then, just when it seemed like the investigation had stalled, another pivotal shift arrived. Soon enough, detectives reached out to the family with a request. They needed DNA samples, not from Deandria, but from her 4-year-old son. They explained that comparing the child's DNA would help confirm whether biological evidence inside the van belonged to her mother. Her uncle agreed, though doing so meant confronting a devastating possibility. And then the results came in, results that would bring the case to its most chilling turning point yet. But before I tell you what investigators discovered, it's important to understand how this evidence would change the entire direction of the investigation. The DNA comparison results confirmed what investigators feared most. Deandria Ford had indisputably been inside that van, just as the surveillance footage showed. But the findings went far beyond that. Her DNA was found mixed with Yolan Washington's on bloodstains recovered from a shirt he wore on the night she disappeared. That detail alone indicated not only contact, but violence. It was only after examining these test results that the horrifying truth emerged. On a cold November morning, with forensic reports now in hand, investigators moved quickly. They returned to locate Washington, this time determined not to let him slip away. Officers moved in, arrested him, and charged him with Deandria's murder. Houston police stated that Washington had originally been detained in Dallas for a separate case. After the DNA results linked him to Deandria, he was charged and prepared for extradition back to Houston. However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Even with the murder charge, there was still a critical piece missing. Deandria's body had not been found. Without it, prosecutors knew trial strategy would be more difficult. No body homicide cases can succeed, but they demand overwhelming evidence. As investigators began digging into Washington's past, they uncovered more disturbing details. His background contained a pattern of violence toward women, and now Deandria was the latest victim connected to his behavior. But the case grew even more tangled when investigators realized another chilling layer. Deandria's role as a witness in the capital murder case was not just a coincidence. 2 days after she vanished, she was scheduled to testify about the deadly robbery that claimed the life of 35-year-old Otis Parker Jr. That court date passed without her appearance, deepening suspicions about motive. As investigators pieced together the timelines, they uncovered deeper details tied to the original $1,500 robbery. Deandria had recently returned from a trip to Louisiana with another dancer, and the two had reportedly earned $1,500 from a job arranged by Parker. That same amount became the target of a planned robbery, an incident that ultimately led to Parker's death. According to court documents, the suspects connected to Parker's murder had been sending aggressive, threatening text messages in the days that followed. One message even stated outright that Deandria was not safe in Houston, raising the disturbing possibility that someone wanted her silenced. But detectives also knew those messages weren't the only pieces of evidence they needed to consider. But detectives also knew those suspects were already in custody at the time she disappeared. So if someone wanted her gone, who actually carried it out? And why did the danger change so drastically? Meanwhile, as all of this surfaced, her family continued speaking publicly. They stressed that while the capital murder case added complexity, it did not erase the basic truth. A young mother had disappeared after getting into a van with a stranger, and she deserved the same urgency and resources as anyone else. Right at that moment, the investigation took another sharp turn. As the forensic evidence kept building, search efforts expanded across multiple states. Volunteers and family members continued combing through wooded areas, empty lots, and abandoned structures. Detectives analyzed cell tower data, reviewed camera footage from highways, and searched locations connected to Washington. But it would take months, nearly an entire year, before the breakthrough they needed finally surfaced. On March 15, 2024, authorities in Dallas discovered human remains inside a culvert. Due to the body's condition, immediate identification was impossible, but investigators suspected the remains might belong to Deandria. Still, forensic confirmation would take time. And it was only after months of waiting, until September 17, 2024, that DNA analysis officially confirmed the truth. The remains found in the Dallas culvert were those of 22-year-old Deandria Ford. The discovery ended a year-long search, but opened deeper wounds. It meant that all the hope her family held on to, hope to find her alive, hope her son would see her again, hope she had simply been held or hidden, had vanished. They now faced the finality of her death. But the revelations didn't stop there. The truth, however, was even more horrifying than anyone imagined. Deandria had been a key witness in a capital murder case. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time when Parker was killed. She had received angry text messages warning her she wasn't safe. She had also spent her life trying to survive financially, raising her child while working in an environment full of risk. If she had known she was a target, whether because of the murder trial or the people surrounding it, she might have chosen safer routines. She might have stayed in public places, shared locations, or asked others to accompany her. But she could not protect herself from dangers she did not fully understand, and dangers she was never properly warned about. Despite everything that had happened, her family continued pushing for transparency. They wanted answers: why she wasn't given proper protection as a key witness, why her disappearance wasn't treated with urgency from the very beginning, and why the man connected to her last known moments had been released so quickly. These were questions that lingered even after the partial closure of identifying her remains.
Right now at 5 o'clock, the family of a local woman missing for a year is finally getting some answers. The Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office identified the remains discovered just a few weeks ago to be that of Deandria Ford. Thank you so much for joining us for KPRC 2 News at 5. I'm Daniela Guzman. Keith Garvin is off today. We have team coverage on this developing story on air and online on click2houston.com. Let's start off with KPRC 2's Rowan Balogan joining us live from Southwest Houston with a timeline of events and details on the suspect. Rowan.
Now, Daniela, the remains of Ford found in Dallas County, the same county where the man investigators say perpetrated this crime. the 21-year-old, also remains in jail. It's an outcome family members of Deandria Ford didn't want to see. Her remains identified in Dallas nearly a year after she disappeared from this bar and grill in East Houston. Ford's uncle, Kevin Carrier, spoke with KPRC2's Rochelle Turner shortly after her disappearance.
Just at full disclosure, we were told by HPD that the person of interest, suspect, was detained out of town.
The person, this man, lled Washington. He was arrested in Dallas for a different case, but later charged in Ford's murder after investigators said they had evidence connecting him to her death. Court records show investigators saw surveillance video of the two getting into Washington's white van, but he was the only one seen leaving the vehicle. Dallas police tell KPRC2, quote, "This is being investigated as an unexplained death and the investigation is ongoing." However, Houston police tell me they're leading the investigation and waiting for Washington's extradition back to Houston.
Meanwhile, Washington's legal case continued to move forward. Prosecutors prepared to argue the murder charge using the evidence found inside the van, the surveillance video, the DNA results, and Washington's movements between Houston and Dallas. Inside courtrooms, tension grew as attorneys laid out the sequence of events. The defense highlighted the lack of a body early in the investigation, but once the remains were identified, that argument shifted. But justice would not come easily, and the battle was far from over. For Deandria's family, no conviction could bring back what they lost: a daughter, a niece, and a young mother whose 4-year-old son now had to grow up without her. Her grandmother had begged for answers for months. Her uncle had become the voice of the family, speaking out about how missing women of color often receive less media attention and slower responses from law enforcement. Their grief was made heavier by the belief that more could have been done to keep her safe. And yet, even after the discovery of her remains, searches continued.
Not for her, but for accountability, for explanations, for improvements in how vulnerable witnesses are protected. Volunteers who once searched fields now showed up in courtrooms. Advocates who distributed flyers now demanded policy changes. Deandria's story serves as a stark reminder. Danger is not always obvious, not when it comes through workplace interactions, not when it comes through the justice system, and not when it hides behind ordinary faces. She was a young mother trying to survive, trying to provide, trying to build a better life. But instead, she became entangled in a chain of events involving money, violence, and criminal networks that exposed her to extreme danger. And at the end of the day, her disappearance and later confirmation of her death raised painful, critical questions about her protection as a witness and the systems that were meant to safeguard her. Do you think law enforcement or the courts should have done more to protect her as a key witness? What would you have done differently to keep yourself safe if you were in her position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and thank you for watching.